I mean, what is a property? A property is just something that describes an object. So you can describe it in tons of different ways, but make sure you realize we're not talking about something that you own. We're talking about something that describes an object. So then, what is a physical property? A physical property just describes the way a substance looks, feels, etc. So basically, you can observe it without changing it. A chemical property is going to be a property that describes the way a substance reacts. So the only way to observe it is to change it. We're going to do some examples. So in the chart below, there's examples of physical properties. I want you to consider the objects listed and then check the properties that describe that object. Then at the bottom, I want you to write in the opposite property. I'm going to go ahead and do the first one with you. Absorbent. Okay, so you're going to check which ones are absorbent. So is a rubber glove absorbent? No. Is fishing line absorbent? I hope not. Iron nail? Nah. How about a hand towel? Well, yeah, that would be absorbent. That's the whole point of it, right? It takes the water off of our hands. How about glass? Well, no. If glass was absorbent, it would pull in the water from outside through the windows, right? Paper towel? Yep, that one's absorbent. Do you get the idea? Okay, so now let's talk about that opposite property. So the opposite property would be the word that describes the opposite meaning of the property at the top. So let's try to think. What is the word that describes the opposite of absorbent? So a word that describes something that can't absorb something. So some of these words you can find a really fancy word. Some of them you can't. Absorbent, there is something called adsorbent. Honestly, I had to look that up. So the thing that I thought of was non-absorbent. That is a word also, and it works just fine, okay? So now let's move on to the next section and see if you can do that. So you're going to explore the following possibilities. You're going to describe the property is needed to make the object and one material possible that would contain that property. So basically they're asking you, could you make a metal window? Well, the answer to that is no. You could not make a metal window. What property is needed to make a window? And if it helps, you guys can use the previous section as, words to choose from, but a property that would make a good window would be transparent, right? Or see-through. And then you think, what would be good a material to make a window out of? And just think about stuff around you. Look out the window. What is that made out of? And most windows are made out of glass. Okay? So this one is thinking a little bit outside the box, but just remember, all of these things they're asking you to make obviously couldn't be made. You're trying to figure out what property you need to make them and what would be a good material. Okay? So the very last thing we're going to talk about when we talk about properties is chemical properties. And they're a little bit harder to think about. Chemical properties, remember, are properties that you have to actually change the substance in order to observe them. So we're talking about things that describe the way something reacts. Some examples I'm going to give you are the ability to rust. So whether or not a substance will rust or not is a chemical property. The only way to find out if something will rust is to leave it out in the elements. Expose it to water, see if it'll rust. But if you do that, then you no longer have the metal, you have rust. So why would it be important to know if something will rust or not? Well, that way you know how to store your stuff. You know whether or not you can leave it outside or not. Okay? Another chemical property is flammability, or the ability to burn. And you probably know why this is important. Obviously, you want to know whether or not something will burn so that you know not to put it too close to something that's hot. you know, whether or not to put it too close to your stove in the kitchen, or if you have a fireplace, you wouldn't put it too close to that, okay? And the last one we're going to talk about, you may not have ever thought before, but some things have the ability to react with light. And one of those things is probably in your medicine cabinet at home. It's called hydrogen peroxide, or we just probably call it peroxide. And have you ever noticed that peroxide is in a brown bottle, but rubbing alcohol is in a white bottle? And the reason is because hydrogen peroxide reacts with light. And so if we didn't know that, or if scientists didn't know that, or whoever makes it didn't know that, they wouldn't store it properly. They wouldn't give it the right container. And your hydrogen peroxide wouldn't work the way it should. Okay? So there's 3 examples for you. I hope that gives you a good understanding of the difference between physical and chemical. Physical just tells us, using our senses, about the property or about the object. So color, size, shape, all that kind of stuff. And then chemical, we actually have to alter the substance to see if it has it or not.